Hello and welcome to the EcoCast. Today's topic, exploring innovations in networking. We've got a great event lined up for you today. Thank you so much to everyone out there for joining us on this EcoCast. On this event, you'll hear from experts at some of the most innovative networking companies in the world today, specifically Gigamon and new EcoCast presenter Alkira. Thank you so much, again, everyone out there, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on this EcoCast. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for the event today. Before we kick it off, just a few things that you should know. First off, we will have some prizes. I'll talk about those here in just a moment. We also want this to be an educational event, so we encourage you to ask questions there in the questions box. It's in your audience console on the left-hand side, and it's there that we'll be taking your questions and queuing up the best questions for our dedicated Q&A sessions happening at the end of each of our two presentations on this EcoCast. We also will have some questions for you. In fact, I'll be bringing up a poll question here for you in just a moment because we want to get your feedback. We want to hear about your challenges and what you'd like to hear more of on these events. We would love for this to be a social event. You can tweet directly from the console using the hashtag on the bottom of the screen. The hashtag for the event today is ATM EcoCast. And then finally, there are a couple of resources available in the Handouts tab. First off, there's a link at the top that'll take you to gigamon.com for more information on Gigamon. And then there's a link to download a PDF resource from Alkira. In fact, this is their entire slide deck for today. There's some really cool architectural drawings in here. You want to make sure that you download those so that you have them for reference on this exciting new solution that Alkira will be talking about as well. Now, I mentioned prizes. We do have 3 Amazon $500 gift cards that we'll be announcing on this event live. If you're watching this on demand, I'm sorry, the drawing has already occurred. The prize terms and conditions can be found in the Handouts tab. All prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. Now, like I said, the hashtag for today is ATM EcoCast. You can follow Actual Tech Media on Twitter. You can follow me as well, David M. Davis, and all of our social channels over on YouTube, Facebook, and the 10 on Tech podcast. On the top right-hand side of your console there, you'll find links to our LinkedIn page, Twitter, and YouTube as well. We post all of our latest and greatest stuff on LinkedIn. It seems like the hottest place for enterprise technology these days, so if you just pick one, I encourage you to follow us there. And before I introduce you to today's first presenter, I just want to set the stage here for a moment and talk about the state of the enterprise network. Some statistics for you. First off, 50% of workloads will be running outside the data center by 2021. That's the statistic that was published in the Cisco State of Digital Technology report recently. And to me, this just creates complexity. I mean, there are benefits, of course, to doing it, but for a lot of us who administer the network, when workloads are running outside of our existing on-premises data center, things start to get more complicated, and we just need more tools, to ensure that we can troubleshoot problems, we can monitor performance, we can ensure that our network has resiliency. So another statistic that creates more complexity is there will be 14.6 billion IoT devices by 2021 as well. So more and more devices to monitor, more and more devices on the network. There'll also be a 42% annual growth rate in business and mobile, or there has been, I should say, across the previous year. 53% of cybersecurity attacks cause greater than 50% in damage. So we have a greater threat attacking our network than ever before, combined with this huge annual growth rate and a massively increasing number of network devices. And then one more statistic, and that is, according to Gartner, by 2023, over 60% of enterprises will deem networking as core to their digital business. And that, I would think, could be higher, but surprisingly, only, in the past, only 20% of companies out there have deemed the network as a strategic business enabler. So the network is being seen as more and more critical to the company, which means there's more eyes on us as network administrators and IT managers and decision makers to ensure that the network is always up and performing well. But we do face some challenges, of course, limited bandwidth, especially going out to the edge, network latency issues, especially around the edge, or perhaps even connecting our on-premises data center to the cloud, constant threat of security. I mean, there's articles and stories, on the internet and in the news of ransomware attacks, unfortunately, happening every day. We need to constantly scale up our network. Our end users and our applications have greater expectations all the time of being able to just instantly send, very large files, very large, video content, large amounts of data. We have challenges around visibility and monitoring. So many companies out there have either no visibility, very few monitoring solutions, or at the other end of the spectrum, they might have 8 different, monitoring and visibility solutions. And we really need to reduce those down to just the solutions that really work and give us the visibility that we need. We also have high costs around the network in many cases. And I think the greatest theme here is just overwhelming complexity. We need greater efficiency. We need greater simplification as the network continues to grow and expand. And that's why I'm excited to have experts today on today's Networking EcoCast from Gigamon and Alkira. We've got some really cool content lined up for you. Before I introduce you to our first presenter, I've got a poll question for you, and that is, what are your networking challenges? I know I listed out what I felt like are the challenges of IT managers and networking admins out there today, but go ahead and tell us what your challenges are. I put the poll question there in the slides window. This is a multi-select question, so feel free to select more than one challenge. I think most of us have more than one challenge when it comes to networking, and I'll give you a few moments to answer that poll, and I will share the results. And if there's a challenge that you're facing that isn't listed there, just drop it in the questions box, and I will share it with everyone on the event today. All right, lots of responses coming in. Thank you for those. We do appreciate them. Let me go ahead and share the results of this poll with you. And 56% said security is their greatest concern, followed by 44% who said monitoring and visibility, 42% said network complexity, and 30%, dropping down from there, 30% said higher cost. So 2% said their concern's not listed, so drop it in the questions box, and I will share it with everyone out there on the event today, and I'll use it to improve this poll for next time. And then the next poll question on the screen is, what's your time frame for updating or adding new IT solutions at your company, specifically in the area of networking? And I'll give you a moment to answer that one as well. We've got our first presenter warming up here in the green room, and I will introduce you to him in just a moment. All right, thank you everyone who responded to that poll. Looks like a lot of you are planning to improve your networking infrastructure, networking solutions here in the very recent future. So we appreciate that information. And with that, it's time to kick off today's EcoCast. I'm excited to introduce Mr. Bassam Khan, Vice President of Product and Technical Marketing Engineering at Gigamon. Bassam, thank you so much for being here. Take it away.
Great. Thank you, David. Hello, everybody. Very happy to be here. My name is Bassam, and I look after a few of the technical areas and a couple of product marketing related areas here at Gigamon. Today, we're going to be covering different journeys that our customers have taken to move workloads to the cloud or build new workloads in the cloud space. We're going to be looking at the 4 different categories of journeys: principles around the journeys, what makes it fall into one of the categories. And then we're going to look at best practices, what to expect when you're going through the journeys, pitfalls to avoid, tips and tricks, and so on. And I should mention all of this is based on a paper and a webinar we did with a person named Rich Mogul. Rich is a long time, or was a long time, security analyst. He was a VP of security at Gartner. Then he's founded his own company called Securosis, and we worked with him recently to do the research. And we actually did a webinar if you wanted to check that out as well. Lastly, I'll close with a couple of slides on Visibility Fabric. This is what Gigamon does. This is how we help our customers with the journey. It's going to be fast-paced. I'm going to be talking fast because there's a lot to cover in the next 15 minutes or so. Plus, we'd love to take your questions, so do type in your questions as you see them as we go along. Every cloud journey is unique because every organization has a unique set of application circumstances, compliances, data centers, history, and so on. However, it's not unknown. What do we mean by that? We mean that the patterns of making the journey is something that we can tend to see over and over and over. And it's a patterns that you can see on which journey you happen to be falling into, and it will allow you to avoid pitfalls. It will allow you to see how to make the most of the journey. What are those four journeys? First of all, developer-led journey. This is the oldest type of journey that's been out there for moving workload to the cloud. This is where a set of developers go into AWS, go into Azure and say, hey, look, I can go move this application. I can build this application in the cloud. And then the rest of the organization kind of shuffles behind that developer-led initiative that went in. And a lot of times that not just development, it's also deployment, as you guys well know. Second is data center transformation. These are the longer pole planned deployments, and I'll be diving into all four of these in a couple of slides. Actually, I've been diving a lot into all four of these in a couple of slides. Snap migration is the next important, or next general category of migrations. This is where, oh crap, we call it the oh crap journey. So something's happening and my licenses are expiring, my data center is shutting down, I got to move offices. COVID is a good example of that, where everyone's working from home now. I need to move these applications, need to move these workloads to the cloud as fast as possible. The last one is if Snap migration is the oh crap journey, this fourth one is it's the Zen journey. It's taking a deep breath, greenfield opportunity, building a brand new workload in the cloud. We're also starting to see a lot of that with our customers as COVID and other situation kicks in. The applications that are being brought to the cloud tend to be more sort of thought through, redone, not just let's move the application, but let's look at the business process underneath the application, see what other changes we need to make. Okay, with that, we're going to be diving into all four of these. Now, you don't need to memorize or even process what I'm showing here right now. We're going to take each of the four columns here one by one in a piecemeal order. You will have access to these slides. You will have, so you can read this later. But the notion here is that we've grouped this into these four categories, but also looked at 6 or 7 different elements around the journey and why they're relevant and how to identify what your journey looks like. So let's dive into the first one, which is developer-led. So you won't see this happening in the small organizations, in the startup-like places, but we do see this happening a lot in the medium to larger size organizations. And it's across all verticals. However, there are certain verticals where there's regulatory implications, whether it's financial, government, or healthcare, where these types of developer moving workloads on their own to the cloud may be a little bit less. Fast and slow from a project velocity perspective. Why is it fast and slow? Because it's easy to build in the cloud. It's easier to deploy applications in the cloud. It's easy to grow that application. Then slow comes from, hey, I need to secure this thing. I need to have operational impact on these things. I need to have monitoring, performance analytics, and so on. So that's what we mean by fast, then slow. Tooling, the row for tooling basically says, what am I using to do that security monitoring, to do the operational monitoring? What is it that I need to put in place? These are tools, network-based tools, packet-based tools, and so on that we have. And the budget owner, the project owner for this are the individual divisions and such. Now, let's dive into, there's a lot to process here. I'm going to talk you guys through this and keep in mind that there's actually quite a bit to discuss, so I'll go speak relatively quickly. So for this one, having your entire organization dragged into the cloud because of the efforts for a small team or a small bunch of people, it's tricky. It's tricky, but it's not unmanageable. So hopefully the suggestion I'm going to walk you through will help you get the project under control and build a base, really. That's the important thing for moving forward. And if we keep our longer term goal in mind, which is really to build a base, build a template, you're going to hear me repeat this multiple times. That's a good pattern to it. That's a good framework to have as we go into this. So as I mentioned, this was the first adoption when we start to encounter like a decade ago about workloads moving to the cloud. So there's plenty of lessons to learn from here. Lesson number one, don't be antagonistic, if I can say that properly. Yes, the team probably knew better. They kind of backed into a corner. They probably shouldn't have done some things they did. But the goal now is to take corrective actions, not punitive actions. It's kind of what we tell our customers. The goal now is to reduce the urgent risks while developing a plan, sort of a template to build this runaway project under control, bring it into the fold. So the first thing is don't simply apply your existing policies and tooling from your other environments to this one. We suggest you look at tooling and processes that are appropriate for that specific cloud provider. Things like how many environments are involved, how many accounts, subscriptions, how are the environments structured. This involves mapping out your applications, the PaaS services offered by the provider, like load balancers, like serverless capabilities, and so on, the IAMs, the networks, and the data storage. So all of these are specific to that service provider. Also, how are the services configured? What are the networks? How are the networks structured? SDNs used by all major cloud providers on the surface may look the same. Under the hood, they're quite a bit different. So that's why this really needs to be provider specific. And most importantly, where does the project touch other enterprise resources, other enterprise data? This is super important because it helps you understand your exposure. Are there unknown VPN connections? Did someone peer through an existing dedicated network pipe to make the process work? Is the project taking on internal database? Is looking at accessing internal database over the internet? By the way, we have seen all of that and more. Risk from internet exposure is also pretty common in this type of a environment. That's the first thing we recommend that you lock down. We also commonly see resources like administrative servers and jump boxes exposed to the internet at large. So these are things people set up as a step-by-step basis of moving workloads to the cloud, but they kind of stay exposed. So in almost every single assessment, we find that at least one instance or a container that has port 22 exposed to the world. And the quick fix for these is simply to lock it down and just kind of lock them down to your known IP address ranges. Identity access management, IAM, is the next big piece of focus for us. This presentation and what I'm going to be talking about really is focused on networking, so we won't spend a lot of time here. Only one point I'll make here is that when developers build out an environment, they almost always overprivilege access to themselves and overprivilege access to application components. And we've seen this over and over and over. So do keep that in mind. So I'm not going to dive deeper into that. Misconfigurations of cloud services are next. So things like public storage buckets being there's a lot of configurations. So public storage buckets, unsecured API gateways, and other services which are internet exposed, but won't show up if you're only looking at the virtual network. So things to keep in mind. So overall, the key to handling the situation is to avoid panic, focus on the obvious risks first, and then take your time to sweep through the rest in the specific ways the cloud provider is providing. So get things stabilized, minimize the obvious risks, and then look at how to optimize based on your cloud providers. The next category of journey is really around data center transformation. So this happens typically very large organizations. So this is where the operations team comes up and says, hey, John, hey, Joe, Bassam, we need to move this workload to the cloud. Here's what it's been doing. And there's very strong visibility in what's been happening. So it's a known project. It's usually always a big project. And these tend to be multi-year data center moves. And these tend to be some of the most complex projects in IT that we've seen. So moving everything from one physical location, it's a big, to a virtual one, is a big undertaking. And doing that while keeping services up and running without shutting down business, either planned or unplanned shutdowns, are even more trickier. And so this is one of the big things, and it happens across all the verticals. These tend to be much slower, long-term planned projects. Risk is lower, although I should add here the fact that while the risk is lower, the risk of business changing underneath us while we're moving this workload over, there's a high risk of that happening as well. So jumping into the plan, so look at cloud as an opportunity of doing things better, not just moving your work over. So ideally in a cloud native way. Also, time is your friend here. So don't rush. Don't let your cloud provider push you along faster than you're comfortable with. Remember, the priorities that they have is not the same as the priorities you have. And don't assume that your tooling and existing tools and processes will work well in the cloud. We see many organizations bring across their tools and so on because people are familiar with it or because they already have licenses for it. Those aren't always the best reasons to deploy something entirely in an entirely new cloud operations. But having said that, these days, many of these tools we've been using on premises have some cloud versions. You should still evaluate them, assuming that they meet your needs in the cloud. And they could be a useful bridge as you're moving workloads into the cloud. An important point to make here is that you probably won't want to run everything in a single huge account or subscription or project on just one, two, or three virtual networks. Sadly, this is pretty common and falls apart. Doing that tends to fall apart within 18 months, 24 months, maybe a little bit longer because of service limits, because of how networks work differently in the cloud or how what the requirements are for cloud native applications. Having multiple cloud environments, like multiple accounts, subscription projects, and so on, and very likely multiple virtual network in each environment, that helps us, will help you manage the blast radius, and it'll help you control that and manage service limits and helps limit IAM scopes and so on. So it's important that we're looking at this from a segmentation perspective in that sense. Mapping out your existing applications and environments is also super important. So that's networks, cross-application connectivity, dependencies, network associated security controls, relating and other supporting services like DNS and logging. It's important to map these out. So create a registry, create an inventory, then prioritize and sequence which ones need to happen as you're moving this into the cloud. So mapping out your cloud application dependencies. You might have, for example, 50 applications which all connect back to a shared customer database. So this directly impacts how you structure your accounts, your virtual networks, and your connectivity options. We talk about building a scaffolding next, and we kind of define as scaffolding because it's a template. Start with the foundational services first that you'll need across all your cloud environments, things like logging, monitoring, some of the things I just touched on, cloud assessment, cloud automation, visibility monitoring tools, your IAM. You'll probably need at least one transit network. Keep that in mind. Design this transit network in its own account for transit only. Don't design it to contain any actual resources. With probably maybe a couple of exceptions might be like shared services and such. And when you're doing all of this, build this as infrastructure as code templates in your mind. And so you're basically creating what's called landing zones for new accounts, new applications and such that you're moving into these projects. The last is migration. So think of this as an iterative process, just like building a scaffold and smaller environments. Move your projects over in a prioritized order. And that'll help you learn as you go along. So as you're moving additional workloads over, think about it as iterative. And as you're also moving the project over, try to refactor and re-architect to the best effort you can. It's kind of stating some of these obvious, I want to level set. But a lot of times we find that some of the obvious things are often, a lot of times overlooked when we are talking to customers. So in the iterative process, for example, you may want to, you should also try to fit the network to your application. So don't just kind of bring the network over, go with generic application, but mold the network itself. And we have the ability to do that in the virtual environment. So for example, we can now have multiple software design networks. We can have where each one, for example, contains a bare minimum of networking function for that specific project. It's also really important to do this because this helps reduce attack surface. It also gives you compartmentalization. So these are all good things from a security perspective, also from a debugging and other things we're going to need to deal with later on. Okay, lastly, keep up with continuous assurance. Mistakes happen, and your shared monitoring, visibility, remediation controls tools will help you limit the risk exposure. Just don't wait until there's one big assessment done at the end. The third function, or the third category of migration, really is what's called the snap migrations, the OSH migration, where something's happened. We again tend to not see this in the really small organizations. These tend to happen in medium, large size organization, like something is coming to an end of lifing a product or a data center move or whatever. It goes across all verticals. The project velocity, you do get some level of heads up, although in the COVID days, it's more like 18 to 24 weeks and not months. And that really is the reality. We've seen our customers go through this pretty extensively. And the risk is high, and the tooling is something that's kind of thought through last. So it can be one of the riskiest adoption overall. Short timelines, kind of messiness of the infrastructure. And these projects we find usually have a heavy dose of cloud provider pressure or consultant pressure or somebody else pressuring to move fast and just glossing over the complexity that we have to deal with. So your primary objective here should be to minimize the immediate risk and create a baseline to use as you clean things up. So get something to the MVP, minimum viable product level, and clean things up as we go forward. So getting the right people, right skills is super important. Obviously, don't just copy and paste your infrastructure into the cloud because cloud environment's different, as we talked about. Constantly look for opportunities to manage the blast radius. It's done through some of the techniques we talked about before. You typically won't have a lot of time for the migration for any serious refactoring, re-architecting, given the nature of this thing. But instead focus on strong scaffold, instead focus on management controls as you're doing these migrations over. And follow the recommendations that I talked about earlier. But now you might need to replicate some of your current environment because of the time limits and such. And so with things like peering networks and transit networks, you can architect your new cloud network with subnets and separate virtual networks, for example, and then connect them together. So even though it's a snap migration, you still have some level of flexibility and timing to be able to re-architect. Be cautious, judicious about allowing internet access. You've heard me talk about this before. This applies very much here as well. Controlling the public perimeter is crucial. Early on is crucial. And there's quite a few things that can be accidentally opened up during the data migration while the teams are rushing to throw assets into the cloud. So make sure you're keeping a continuous eye on these things. And to the best of your abilities, do implement in-cloud network segment segregation and with security groups and other techniques that we have as well. So these are the ideas. I'm going to go a little bit quicker on the last bullet point here. This is the Zen move. It's a well-designed architecture, will reduce most risk. Automation should also maintain a strong and safe posture over time. So embed automation into your new design. So automation, not just for the application scalability itself, but the monitoring scalability, the securing scalability. Many services that the cloud providers provide are directly public facing and must be managed and configured. So some of the things we talked about earlier as well. Dev teams are allowed to move fast and break things. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with that, it becomes a problem when they move fast and secure and faster than what security teams can help contain. So early engagement with these projects, architectural advice that you're giving into this, continuous monitoring and so on plays a key factor. And container networks can also it's easy to lose track of containers, especially when they're self-contained. So that's kind of where Gigamon comes in. Actually, before I get to Gigamon, one last click here, which is to give your people time to come up to speed and give them time to learn. Because if you're pressuring them with the project, there's a chance that they're not learning enough. They're not knowing and designing the best architecture that's available. So Gigamon can help in all of this. So without Gigamon, basically, we don't have access to the traffic. We don't have visibility to what's going on, whether it's on premises, some cloud, some application will be running on premises, discovering which pieces are talking to whom, but also as it moves into the cloud, getting visibility into the cloud environment itself. So knowing what the before looks like, which pieces are talking to which parts of the application, are there APIs that are open that people are accessing and so on. But once everything moves to the cloud, it's very important to be able to monitor that because of shared responsibility model of the cloud. And the way we do that is what's called the V-Series solution. So these are these are applications running in VPCs, basically Gigamon running in a VPC. We also have a container version of our product. And we have the virtual taps that's tapping out the data. It's one-to-many relationship. So you tap once and you can send to any number of tools. So this is not something you'll be able to get from your native tools like VPC mirroring on AWS. It only has one destination. Here you can send to any destination. Here you can pre-filter, so you're not sending all of the traffic over. Here you can also backhaul some of the selected data if you wanted to. All managed from one central place, whether it's on-premises, data in motion or in the cloud, in private cloud, any kind of cloud, single place, sending data over, even container traffic, we can bring together to make sure your tools are seeing what they need to see. So summary of the key features here is that we have this notion of flow mapping, which allows you to send the right data to the right tool. There's what we call automatic target selection. So this allows you to scale out. So by installing us and building us into your infrastructure as code or into your golden images, we're able to scale the visibility as you're going from 10 instances or to up to hundreds of VPCs. GigaSmart is a patented technology that we have that allows you to extract NetFlow data if you wanted to. It allows you to reduce the amount of traffic without losing any visibility, like taking out all duplicate packets and so on. It's super powerful capability. Lastly, Gigamon operates in a multi-cloud environment. It's a single place of visibility for any type of data, whether it's on-premises, any hybrid cloud, private, public cloud, but also multi-cloud type of an environment. So with that, I'm going to be closing with the four last key points. Number one, there are lots of assets that's available to you. So if you just go around and go to our website, you'll find a lot of different tools that we have that allows you to have a better cloud journey. A lot of this data came from our partners, from our customers, including almost everything I've talked about in this presentation. Lastly, if you have questions and such, you can, by the way, you can try our own test drive for an AWS, on test drive on Azure, play with our system from our website, or we'd love to help you out. If you need help, just give us a call. With that, David, I'm going to be opening this up for questions or questions that people might have.
Great presentation, Bassam. I really appreciate that. Cool stuff you guys are doing there at Gigamon. We do have some questions for you from the audience. I want to encourage everyone out there, if you have a question, now's the time to get it in. Bassam, you ready?
Yes, I am. Love to hear the questions.
Excellent. All right. Let's see. Before I ask the first question, I want to remind everyone I've just brought up the poll question for you on the screen that says, what additional information would you like about the Gigamon solution? And I'll leave that up while we do our Q&A. So Bassam, first question I see here, do we really need network traffic visibility for a cloud service?
Okay, that's a great question. Let's start off with the probably one of the fundamental questions. I probably should address this earlier. In fact, I actually had this question, David, when I was interviewing with Gigamon a few years ago. And the answer is resounding yes. And it's resounding yes for several points, probably 3 points. The first one is, if you look at what the vendors are doing, they are building network level visibility. Google provides access to the network data of their cloud. Amazon has VPC mirroring. There's issues with some of these, they only go to one destination and so on. But if you look at the platforms, if you look at the monitoring tools, the security tools that rely on agents to extract the data out. So the first thing is that if you look at the vendor landscape, more and more people are trying to get the data out, the network traffic level data out. Number 2 is a shared responsibility model. Just because Amazon, let's say, owns the plumbing, doesn't mean that you are immune to ensuring security. Just like you aren't immune to ensuring user experience. So while Amazon might say, we'll provide you this level of security, this level of performance in the machines, the user experience, they're not going to guarantee your application's user experience being super positive. Same thing with security. So that's the second thing. The third thing would be around network visibility. Actually complements a lot of the current tools in place. What's called observability is kind of the general term that Gartner and others use. There's companies like Datadog, New Relic, Splunk, and others. And currently we're in the process of partnering with a lot of these companies in the space, but providing this network level visibility, which basically simplifies the complexity of a hybrid deployment, complexity from logs, from traces, which are very dependent on the application. Network traffic is very, very independent. It's the ground truth. And that's why it's hugely important for visibility. By the way, visibility is one of the questions that came up when I looked at the survey earlier. Performance, security, monitoring, and visibility. Number one, number two, number three, top network challenges that people have right now. This is meant to address that head on, David.
Excellent. Yeah, that was one of the top concerns when we polled the audience at the start of the event. Visibility is so critical, and so is performance, like you said. Let's see, next question they're asking, I like this one. How much VPC resources does your TAP consume?
Okay, so somebody that has experience in agents and how much havoc agents can rake on VMs. So we're typically 2 to 4%. We're usually lower than that, but we say 2 to 4% of your of the VM's resource. Keep in mind, the alternative to this is that your tools are deploying their own agents to feed that specific tool, and each of those agents tend to be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8% of resources. And if you have 2 or 3 or 4 tools, you're talking about pretty real money real soon. With our tapping, our agent, it's one to many. So you're tapping once, and you're able to send it to any tool after that, simply by just redirecting traffic and replicating the traffic, and also do filtering. So not all tools need to see all traffic.
Excellent. That's an important point there. I like that one to many. Next question, they say you talked about backhauling data out of the cloud. I didn't understand that point. Why would you want to do that? It's expensive to take data out. Yeah,
I brought that up because I'd say about half of our customers do some level of backhauling of data, whether it's, I don't even know if it's called backhauling if you're taking from on-prem to the cloud, or between multi-cloud type of environments. If you're a large organization, you've got multiple clouds, you've got distributed applications there. Typically, we have seen almost all of those customers have some level of data extraction out to the elements, out to the different tools that are running in the specialized tools running in the different cloud environments. So most people don't replicate the exact same tooling for monitoring and security in every one of the platforms, every one of the cloud platforms. So that's why some backhauling is necessary. The second part to that is that the backhauling isn't just about backhauling all of the data out, which you're absolutely right, it gets super expensive. Backhauling with a solution like ours, it's about extracting out what is relevant. If some application needs to see, if some tool rather needs to see some application traffic or some special VM traffic for HTTP port or some other port, we're able to extract just that traffic out. If another tool in another system, another cloud needs to see net flow, so just the flow records, we're able to extract that out, not the volume of data. So it can get expensive, but quite often it's required, and we help minimize that cost exponentially.
Excellent. All right, here's another question. You mentioned understanding the current workload before moving it to the cloud. Can you give us an example? They say, I'm trying to see how much we need to look at the current app versus focus on the new cloud app.
Sure. Yeah, so this has to do with the concept of measure twice and cut once. So we've seen a lot of projects fail or get delayed, and a couple of times rolled back to on-premises because of a hidden or untracked access to that application. Just earlier actually it's a couple of months ago now, I had discussions with a couple of organizations. Their developers for those two different apps, two different companies, basically one government, one business. The developers had long left the company, but they built these third-party integrations over an API that the application was dependent on. One was critical, one was not so critical, which is like a reporting kind of a dashboard kind of a system. But when you look at the UI for the app, when you try to tear down the app, and this is the function it does, those organizations at least were not able to see the API calls coming in. So the way you do this is by looking at the beforehand, looking at the traffic coming in and out. I didn't touch on this at all in this discussion, David. Another key area that we're seeing more and more is the adoption of zero trust architecture. So as you're moving things to the cloud, not only are you moving workloads, but you're understanding the communication that happens, you're encrypting the communication, you're setting policies based on who's allowed to talk to whom. And this is a very important part for any journey to the cloud, and understanding what the before looks like is super important to having a successful after.
Great point. Well said. I think we're running out of time in our live Q&A session here, Bassam, but if folks want to get started with Gigamon and learn more, what do you recommend?
I would recommend going to our website. Now, if you guys have any kind of cloud experience, we have AWS Test Drive. We have Azure Test Drive, so you can just log in. If you'd like to talk to people, we're very happy to walk you through. If you don't like to talk to human beings, you can go to our website, go to the test drive, go to the demo environment, set up the demo. We give you 1 or 2 hours worth of window for you to go and play with our system. We walk you through, we give you full guidance. So my biggest recommendation, David, is that just go to our site, try it out. You'll see the value.
Absolutely. All right. Well, great presentation. Thank you so much for being on the event today, Bassam.
My pleasure.
For more information on Gigamon, check out the handouts tab right there. There's a link to gigamon.com. You can just click on that. That'll open a new tab in your web browser or new window, and you can learn more about the Gigamon solution. Appreciate everyone answering the poll question in the screen. It's now time for our first gift card prize. We have an Amazon $500 gift card going to Charlie Lee from Nevada. Congratulations, Charlie Lee from Nevada. 2 more gift cards still to give out after our next presentation. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And with that, I'm excited to introduce our next presenters on today's EcoCast. Welcome, Mr. David Klebanov, Head of Product Marketing at Alkira, and Mr. Matt Hogue, Senior Enterprise Architect, Koch Industries. David and Matt, it's great to have you on. Take it away.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, David. And hello, everybody. Really excited to be here, and really excited to have Matt co-present with me this session. So we're going to talk about a pretty exciting topic today, networking. I think it's been a while since networking was kind of cool and exciting. Yeah, we had a few interesting things over the past couple of years, but we're definitely going to talk about something very exciting in the networking space, and that is going to be about cloud networking or multi-cloud networking. How does networking apply to the cloud and multi-cloud environment, which is definitely an innovation in the networking space that is really kind of sweeping the market, right? And so Matt is going to take you guys through his journey, what he has done with an Alkira solution, how he looked at the networking and the cloud networking. But before we do that, I wanted just to spend a couple of minutes to set the stage for where we are today and what is the technology that Alkira is bringing to the market. So if you look at the landscape, right, if you look at the landscape of cloud and if you look at the landscape of the enterprise IT and enterprise organization in as a whole, we can identify different personas within the enterprise organization. The folks that deal with cloud, and these are the cloud architects, the cloud compute guys, the cloud storage guys, the application developers. And then you have the traditional IT personas around networking and security. These are architects, engineers, or whatnot. Now, if you look at the clouds, and in here you can see a couple of sort of cloud types, be that an infrastructure as a service, software as a service, or even internet applications themselves, which is kind of like a flavor maybe of SaaS. There's different types of clouds in here, but most importantly, where we're seeing more interest is in the infrastructure as a service clouds. These clouds have really transformed the enterprise data centers and that migration from an on-premise environment into this cloud environment. And for the last decade and a half, this cloud folks and application developers have really been enjoying the benefits that these public clouds and the infrastructure as a service clouds really bring to the market. And this has to do with an agility of how things can be rolled out. Everything is virtualized. Everything is consumed as a service. Availability of the cloud resources on demand. Like I mentioned, the consumption of those resources as a service approach versus something that you kind of do it yourself in a traditional way. Buy a server, rack a server, connect a server, install operating system, configure BIOS settings. So all the things that we know that happened in the past in the data centers and have really been eliminated by the presence of the public clouds, right? And at the same time, when you look at what happens to the networking side of things and the security side of things, that journey had not been that great, right? And you see this kind of an upset, sad individual there on the corner, which is what we many times see the networking guys are, and the way that the networking and security guys really feel within the organizations when they see the cloud teams are deploying at speed, at scale, and really bringing value to the business, while the networking and security folks are kind of trying to navigate this very challenging landscape of slow provisioning, complicated configurations. Many times it's a box-driven, hardware-driven configurations. Restrictive limits that exist in the clouds once they uplift the networking into the cloud. And at the end of the day is really that high TCO, the total cost of ownership that is associated with uplifting networking to the clouds or driving a hardware-based model for this cloud and inter-cloud connectivity. So these things are very challenging for the networking and security, and no wonder that many of the enterprises have been challenged, and they're looking for solutions. How do we make networking agile, and how do we make networking really operate in a full concert and in a full synergy with the cloud? And that's exactly where Alkira comes to fill the gap that we believe is a significant gap that exists in the market and has not been breached up until now. Now, how are we addressing this? So the first is I wanted to introduce a notion of what we call a network cloud. So what is a network cloud? So a network cloud is an Alkira solution that comprises of three main elements, but above and beyond, it is built on an as-a-service global unified network infrastructure. So it's very important, and Matt is definitely going to touch on how that approach has benefited Koch Industries. But this idea of an as-a-service delivery and a reliance on a software unified global infrastructure really gives the solution a very distinctive advantage. Now, the three pillars that this network cloud notion exhibits are things around on-demand connectivity, so the networking piece of things, right? Being ability to connect hybrid and cloud and multi-cloud environments, the ability to insert network and security services into that network, and the ability to provide a deep visibility, advanced controls, and strong governance. So all of these are wrapped up in this as a service delivery. Now, this notion of network cloud is implemented in the Alkira solution in something that we call an Alkira Cloud Services Exchange, which is how we call our actual solution. And that exchange, that services exchange, is a software platform that is ubiquitously present anywhere in the world, and it connects all of the on-premise resources, be those sites, users, data centers, business partners, even very kind of intelligent wide area network fabrics like SD-WANs. It connects all of it together alongside with one or many clouds, one or many SaaS and internet applications, and the network services marketplace, which is what I mentioned in a previous slide, where this network services really come and get integrated into this holistic solution. And of course, all of that is consumed as a service with a full set of APIs. So what we're looking at here is a fully built, baked global network solution that is virtualized and delivered as a service and provisioned literally within minutes. So I wanted to hand it over to Matt and take us through the journey that Coke Industry has made with an Alkira solution. So Matt, to you.
All right. Thanks a lot, David. So I am Matt Hogue. I'm a senior enterprise architect for Coke Industries. The capabilities that David just walked through, I want to give you a little bit of background on our company and kind of how we grew up into the cloud, and some of the pain points that Alkira is really helping to solve for us, and I think that'll really help better connect you with where the value is. So Coke Industries, we're one of the largest privately held companies in America, and we're headquartered out of Wichita, Kansas. It's a pretty diverse group of companies. We have businesses that range from oil and gas to ranching and fertilizers to consumer products and software and data analytics even. We reinvest a very significant portion of our earnings into our businesses, but in the past 6 years alone, we've made nearly $30 billion in technology-related investments. And, that really got those investments and the changes in our businesses got a big boost several years ago when our chairman and CEO published this transformation imperative. The thought here is really, in order for us to stay relevant in the digital age, we need to think and operate our businesses differently. And specifically, my team was created, and we were tasked with, first of all, really preparing our foundational technologies, including the global network for the rapidly growing business demands in the digital age. So, we had looked at several different capabilities up and down the IT stack to really think about how we move this forward. And the key here was we really wanted to be able to move at the speed of digital business, which is, as many people are aware, right? It's completely different from the speed of traditional IT. So, on the network front, one of the first things we did is we deployed a global Viptela SD-WAN. And incidentally, this is where we really met a lot of the Alkira team, including the founders who were at Viptela. We also increased our bandwidth pretty dramatically across about 500 of our locations. And, we implemented direct internet access as we were moving more and more applications to the cloud, to software as a service, things like that. We also, began to dramatically drive improvements in both wired and wireless connectivity at many of our manufacturing facilities. So at this point, our application teams were already starting to, test capabilities and kind of learn the ropes within Amazon Web Services, which was our preferred cloud provider. But we really quickly realized that, moving larger workloads or any significant amounts of data to the cloud, simple VPN connections just weren't going to cut it. And if we were going to put in high-speed direct connects, then we needed to, better plan for resiliency and redundancy. And so our network engineers really started focusing on how do we create this connection to the cloud, and they came up with this concept of transport hub, and that's what we call it at Coke. And essentially, it starts with build into the data centers, and working on a high-speed underlay to begin with, data center interconnects, leveraging MPLS and internet circuits to bring in the WAN site, and then high-speed direct connects to AWS. So this really gave us the kind of foundational bandwidth and resilience we needed to move our workloads to the cloud. If you take into account all of the approvals, engineering design, hardware procurement, circuit delivery, all of those things that go into these builds, version 1 took us about 18 months and about $2 million to really implement. So at this point, our businesses were really pushing down the path of moving workloads and creating new capabilities in the cloud. But we were still anchored in our data centers at this point. So in order to really break the ties with the data center and improve application performance for our end users, we needed to virtually replicate these transport hubs into the cloud. So, we developed what we called our version 2 transport hub, and it took us about 6 months, which was a great, great speed enhancement from the 18 months for version 1. A lot of the time that this took us was around learning the different capabilities, the network constructs of AWS, and really overcoming a lot of the constraints that are built in there. And then also, due to our business segmentation and some of the limitations of cloud networking, each of our businesses ended up having to have their own version or instance of the transport hub. And that limitation was really per region where we deployed in AWS as well. So today we run 10 different version 2 transport hubs across just 2 AWS regions limited in the United States. So the other key point here is this is just AWS. So we hadn't yet branched out into Azure or GCP. At this point, we thought we could probably cut that 6 months down to something less than that, but it's still relearning some of those cloud capabilities. As many of you are probably well aware, cloud networking is just fundamentally different from traditional networks in many different ways. And each cloud provider implements their own version of the network stack in just a bit differently from the rest. So at this point, we had enabled our businesses to access valuable cloud capabilities and deploy them in a way that no longer anchored us to our data centers. But what we found is, we had really built a highly complex set of solutions. In fact, this was so complex that only 4 or 5 of our network engineers were really fully connected to the overall architecture. And then we were still only in a single cloud, and at this point, we really didn't have plans to expand into other solutions simply because of the time and effort it would take to learn those clouds. On top of that, our vision for version 3 of our transport hubs was really transport hub as a service, and we still had no way of getting there. We had talked to dozens of technology providers, and really there was nothing in the market that had exactly what we were looking for. So, David already kind of walked through this slide, but, in mid-2018, I had heard that the founders of Viptela were starting this new startup called Alkira, and I reached out to them, and when they explained, everything that David had kind of walked through to me, I was really excited because we had finally found a technology partner who kind of shared our vision of this network cloud. And on top of that, we had already formed a pretty good working relationship with a lot of the members of the Alkira team because of the early days of Viptela. And, navigating those early days of transformation together really does build that strong relationship. So we quickly started pulling meetings together to talk through some of the constraints that we still had, some of the pain points, and, really walking through that with the Alkira team. And then also, just staying hyper-focused on that whole concept of as a service. Once we were able to start using the Alkira platform, we were instantly pretty amazed and pleased at the ability of the platform to deploy complex cloud networking scenarios in minutes. And what that means to us is we were able to go from this mass of complexity and months worth of work to a very simplified draw your network and deploy it in an afternoon. And when we first, did these tests, it was still on a beta version of the software as well. So at this point, it was definitely looking really exciting for us. So this is an actual screenshot of our Alkira dashboard. And this is the interface that you use to design and deploy your cloud network, including a marketplace to seamlessly insert network and security services, as well as all the day 2 operational capabilities as well. Things such as statistics, alerting, routing, all those things. And this thing is super simple to use. I mean, it's drag and drop, it's click to deploy, right? So we started in production. We took a greenfield approach to begin with, right? So we had a few workloads that weren't already connected into our transport hubs. And for these, we found the deployments to be extremely simple. Now, for our currently deployed transport hubs, we're working to replace all of those. But you know, as I'm sure everybody's connected with, there's some technical debt that we have to unwind in those deployments, and we're working with the Alkira team as well on some additional feature enhancements. But again, we are on track to really transform kind of how we're doing these things. One of the big benefits that we see here is, you know, I talked about the limitations of, you know, why we have to have so many transport hubs today. In the Alkira platform, those things are all, those all go away. So we think we can replace our 10 existing transport hubs with just 2 Alkira CXPs. And that's basically, you know, the 2 different regions that we deploy to today in Amazon. The other piece of this is, you know, we should also be able to dramatically simplify our operations. Not only does the Alkira platform provide these, you know, capabilities as, you know, as a service, but there's also, you know, a team of engineers kind of standing behind it. So, you know, double benefit there of one is as a service. So we've got, you know, potentially more junior IT admins that can help manage these things, but also a team dedicated to building this service, supporting us, and also deploying new capabilities. So security is another key feature that we've taken advantage of in the Alkira platform. It's really easy to insert security services such as Palo Alto firewalls. There's flexibility in things such as licensing, right? You can bring your own license, you can license, you know, deploy as a service. And then also Alkira manages all of the things like auto scaling. So it's, you know, essentially once you have the Palo Alto deployed, all you have to do is manage the policies and rule sets, not the underlying infrastructure, right? So we don't have to worry about any of the AWS constructs or the Palo Alto constructs. We just manage the policies. And so it's also very easy to see how you segment traffic. You know, I'm not sure how well it's coming through on this slide, but different business segments or, you know, network routing segments that you have can be easily identified and carry through the entire platform. And again, it's very much a drag and drop or a policy set of segment A can't talk to segment B, or segment A has to go through this Palo Alto, or segment A only goes to Amazon, right? And then the other thing that I'd like to point out here is, you know, if you look in the middle box on the bottom right, you see the Azure logo there. Up until now, we were exclusively in AWS, and that was true up till about a month ago. While we were deploying some of those greenfield workloads, we had one of our business units come to us with a request to enable a capability in Azure. So, you know, prior to leveraging the Alkira platform, we would have had to tell them, you know, this is probably a 3 to 6 month enablement to really get those cloud on-ramps and connectivity stable for them. But with Alkira, you know, it only took, we were able to get the whole thing deployed in a day, and the network provisioning itself took just minutes. So our cloud platform team and our application teams weren't even ready yet to take advantage of this. And so the learning that we had there is, you know, it's one of those things where historically network team has always been the long pole in the tent. And now we were ready before the application and cloud platform teams. But we still wanted to warn our application teams that they're probably going to see some performance problems because, you know, I assume most people that are listening to this are familiar with the concept of data gravity. So the larger the data sets, the more data pulls apps and services towards it to satisfy the need for high throughput and low latency. So this is where we're telling our applications teams, hey, you've got processing capability in Azure, but your data is in AWS, so the performance probably isn't going to be very good for this initial testing. But once we started actual testing with Alkira, what we found was, a single-digit millisecond latency and well over 200 megs of sustained throughput. Now, these numbers might not sound hugely impactful, but again, keep in mind, this is a small test environment. This is AWS to Azure, where we have services in Azure accessing AWS data in AWS, and this was, not even, a heavy load. This was a single TCP stream, and it was just kind of a quick test. What we found through our testing was we were able to leverage compute in one cloud against data in another cloud. And this is really one of those points where we said, this is going to completely change how we think about potentially leveraging services in a multi-cloud environment without necessarily having to rehome all the data or all the applications. It's kind of a real aha moment for us. So the other thing that the Alkira platform lets us do is expand globally very quickly. So we just recently spun up a region in India based off of some additional business demand that we had there. And what we had seen is there was not a specific CXP from Alkira deployed there yet, but we had two quick learnings, right? One is rapid deployment of new CXPs, right? So they were able to stand up an instance and be ready for everything for us in India in a very small time frame. And then the other piece of that is, the CXPs can exist anywhere that there's a cloud presence. So our ability to deploy globally, regionally, and in a very short time frame just got a dramatic adrenaline boost. The other thing with the cloud, from a global perspective here, is the Alkira makes the cloud workloads effortless to connect. You really don't have to do anything. Once you have multiple CXPs, they just talk. You manage the segmentation and who can talk to what as policy in the interface, but there is no routing. There's no, everything is just maintained throughout the environment. It's super simple, and nothing that our network engineers had to really do here. So as we look within Coke, to kind of continue down our cloud journey, we see additional network services that, we plan to grow with the Alkira platform. So, we've talked to the team about, leveraging some of their capabilities and some of the things on their roadmap as well, around things like advanced routing policies, shared services, cross-segment routing, cloud DMZ, and then other, various NAT scenarios. Again, in an environment where we've grown up through a lot of acquisition, we have a lot of things like IP overlap that, we think the Alkira team can really help with. Voice gateways, zero trust network access. We've got a laundry list of things that, first of all, taking advantage of the capabilities they have, but also working with them to help inform the roadmap on some of the areas where we want to go next. The Alkira team has been really good, listening to the use cases and helping prioritize against their existing roadmaps. So, in summary, what I would say is the Alkira team really has been great to work with. They've got a really smart team. They're very customer focused, and they've been a great partner. In our implementations at Coke, so we're taking our cloud network design and implementations from months to days, and sometimes even just hours. The actual network provisioning itself, they take just minutes. And then we're also discovering that we're no longer locked into cloud platform decisions based off where our data resides. And in cases where our data and applications are running on different platforms, Alkira has really dramatically reduced the data gravity issue that's been a fundamental hindrance to our industry. And then as their network and security services marketplace grows, the value of the platform will also continue to grow for us. And we expect to continue to reduce and optimize our operations through additional day two capabilities in the platform, and they're constantly getting better. So ultimately, this network cloud mental model is freeing up our team to work on other opportunities and allowing us to take advantage of data in ways that I wouldn't have thought possible a year or two ago. And I think we're just really starting to scratch the surface. The last thing that I would say here is, I've been on the other end of these webinars a lot, and rather than taking my word for it, I would really encourage you to go to alkira.com and sign up for your own demo. So, David? Yeah.
Well, thank you, Matt. That's an excellent point. First of all, it's always a pleasure to hear your journey. It's been so inspirational to so many people that we've been talking with, and a lot of people look at what you have done as kind of a model of where they want to take their networks and cloud networks to. And the last point that you made around the demonstration, it's absolutely spot on. I encourage everybody listening here to just simply go to alkira.com/demo and request your own demo, which is really going to show you all the power of the Alkira solution, the Alkira platform, see how they transformed your environment. And in fact, what we have here is I wanted to run a really quick 2-minute video for you guys to see what is it that you would be expecting from the demonstration, what you would be seeing from, in this demonstration in regard to the networking and security capabilities and how the whole provisioning process works. So I'll let you guys listen in for the next 2 minutes, and then we'll just do maybe quickly 1 or 2 questions in the end. So enjoy the video.
When your applications move to the cloud, you need a network that is built for the cloud and behaves like the cloud, delivered as a service, provisioned in 1 click, and ready for use in minutes. No hardware to buy, no software to download, no cloud to learn. But how? Let's take a sneak peek at what you'll see and do to build out your new multi-cloud network when you sign up for your very own personalized Alkira demo. First, we'll hop into the Alkira portal and build your network for the cloud by drawing it on the digital design canvas. Alkira's multi-cloud network is available as a service anywhere in the world. Just choose your global locations on the map. Next, connect your cloud workloads to the closest location. Choose the desired network capacity. Assign network segments and business groups for segmentation and micro-segmentation. Designate billing tags for chargeback. Congratulations! Your clouds are now connected over our secure, high-speed network. Do you also need optimal access to software as a service applications? Simple. Just add regional internet exit points. Now, we'll quickly connect your on-premise sites to your clouds. Just choose IPsec and generate router configuration. Using SD-WAN? No problem. Connect your entire enterprise fabric into Alkira to access your cloud workloads. Need dedicated high throughput? Use AWS Direct Connect as a service from your co-locations. Need to support teleworking? Just add remote access VPN, globally and at scale. The network would not be complete without security. Let's select Palo Alto Networks firewalls from the Alkira marketplace. Now create intent-based policies. Application traffic will be symmetrically steered to the firewalls. With Alkira, your firewalls are always up and available. Need more capacity? Alkira will auto-scale your firewalls based on real-time capacity demand. It is now time to provision your network in 1 click and have it ready for use in minutes. Finally, operate your entire multi-cloud network as a pro with full visibility and governance. No more cloud blind spots. Your network has now been reinvented for the cloud. To see the demo that customers and analysts have called revolutionary, just click Request Demo at alkira.com, and together, We'll bring your new multi-cloud network to life.
All right. Hopefully you got a good glimpse into what the demonstration, the typical demonstration of our solution, the benefit that it's going to give to you. And again, I encourage you guys to go to www.alkira.com/demo and request your demo so we can work with you, show you the Alkira power firsthand. So I'll give it back to David. I'm not sure if there are any questions. We may have gotten a little bit over time, but back to you, David.
Absolutely, yeah. Great presentation. It's just so refreshing to hear, firsthand from a customer how this solution has changed their network and, the life of managing a global enterprise network. So thank you so much to Matt for that excellent presentation. We do have some questions from the audience here. First one that came in, I wanted to ask you, this may be for you, Matt, why was the as-a-service approach particularly important at Coke?
Yeah, I think touched on this a bit in the presentation, but for us, the Coke Industries doesn't, our core competency isn't running networks. We don't make money at it, and I mean, not to disparage our networks teams, but I wouldn't say we're the best at it either, right? So the idea here is how do we get to these capabilities faster to where we can move at the speed that our businesses really need to move and not have to worry about managing all that underlying complexity. That's where, the as-a-service model really was really attractive to us.
Excellent. Yeah, I can see where that would make it so much easier. Next question here, they're asking, did you evaluate different vendors and how did you end up choosing Alkira specifically?
Yeah, so we looked at different vendors along the way. I would say, when we first started out, it was maybe we were a little bit too before the time of cloud networking, and it was pretty painful. What I would say is the various different vendors out there, there's a lot of automation and orchestration capabilities. And those are definitely helpful for moving faster, but at the end of the day, it's still your infrastructure that you still have to understand all of the routing and cloud complexities, and you still have to manage all of that. And so when we found Alkira, it was kind of even though that they're, pretty new company, just coming out of stealth in April, the vision and the speed at which they're executing their roadmap is why we went that direction.
Very nice. Let's see, another question that came in. They said you talked about the technology, but can you elaborate more on the operations side?
Yeah, so again, I think this is something that we're still getting our heads around, right? We've been running our transport hubs now for a couple of years, and I think it's an interesting transition from build it and run it yourself to this as a service model. So, we're working with the Alkira team on the day two capabilities in the platform are great. We're working with them now on things like integration with our operation systems like ServiceNow, right? And that's kind of where we're building this into our overall operations platform. But again, the day-to-day care and feeding is just so dramatically reduced in this platform from where we came from.
Nice. Well, that's great to hear. I've got another question for everyone out there in the audience. I'm just going to bring this up. It says, see the Alkira network solution in action and watch a global cloud network. Would you like to schedule your own personalized demo? I know a number of you said in the questions box there you would like a demo. So if that was you, or if you'd like a demo, just check the box there that says yes while we do some more questions. So David, I want to ask you this question. If folks do go and sign up for the demo, can you kind of walk us through like what happens next? What would they experience and what would they see?
Yeah, it's actually very simple, very intuitive. What you'll see is that once you sign up for the demo, we basically hop on a call with you, and we ask you what are your interests as far as networking is concerned in the cloud, in the multi-cloud, how you connect to the clouds. That kind of tailors the conversation a little bit. And then we just run you through the platform capabilities, and I think like you've seen what Matt was talking about. It's an entirely intuitive canvas that is kind of driven by you modeling your network for cloud, multi-cloud connectivity with services, with visibility and governance representation. So all of that is kind of driven through that intuitive canvas interface. So what we do is we just build it out with you, so you get a sense of what it takes for you to connect different AWS regions, for example, what it takes for you to connect AWS to Azure, what it takes to insert a firewall in between. And what we're seeing overwhelmingly happening is that once folks are kind of seeing the simplicity that it takes to provision network connectivity, to instantiate network services, like firewalls, what it takes to create a policy and symmetrically steer the traffic to the firewalls with absolute zero knowledge of an underlying cloud infrastructure. There is no need to know anything about an underlying cloud or how networking and security works in underlying clouds. What are the concepts in the underlying clouds? It's not a workflow-driven tool. It is a completely sort of a transformational network solution. Right? And as such, it obviously operates on the cloud-native principles that these cloud providers offer. But at the end of the day, we don't just simplify these cloud tasks. We completely eliminate them. You don't even need to know that they exist in order for you to operate it. And that we find this as the biggest challenge for the network and security guys that are choosing potentially solutions that require them to either invest in hardware or understand specific sort of principles of the cloud, because that's how the solutions operate. We took a very sharp kind of turn on that notion and said, you don't need to know these things because they're not part of your they should not be part of your dictionary how these clouds operate. What you should be focusing on is building networks, and you should be focusing on the networking principles, and you shouldn't be learning how each cloud does this networking because each cloud does it very differently. So this very sharp turn from kind of getting into the weeds and maybe doing some workflow automation to a completely transforming how you're looking at networking. That's something that the essence of Alkira is behind, and this as a service approach is really kind of open the door for that to happen. So we walk you through all of that in that demo. That can be a 30-minute demo, it can be an hour demo. It depends how much time you kind of have to allocate to that. But it is what we've seen is that it is very impressive. We haven't come across a customer yet who had seen a demo and kind of turned their back and said, well, you know what, that's not for me. Because anybody who struggles with what networking and security means in a cloud era is kind of blown away by the capabilities of the platform from networking, security, visibility, troubleshooting standpoint. And we're introducing, just like Matt mentioned, we're introducing a whole lot of new capabilities. It's a very fast-growing platform, and so we definitely work with our customers to incorporate additional use cases. And because we have this foundation that we have built, rolling out these new services and new capabilities is really easy for us, and we are very independent of what really happens in the cloud, and we make you independent of what really happens in the underlying cloud infrastructure, because you're operating in the sort of the Alkira solution space, and you're not operating on the kind of the principles of the cloud itself. And that's a very dramatic transformation for network and security folks when they look at how this cloud adoption goes.
Awesome. Well, David, I think you presented it very well, and Matt, your story was very compelling, very fascinating to hear your whole journey with the Alkira solution. David and Matt, excellent presentation. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
For more information on Alkira, as we mentioned, visit alkira.com/demo and sign up for a free trial and a personal demo of the solution. Also check out the full slide deck that you saw today. It's available for download there in your handouts tab with additional information specifically on how Koch Industries used the Alkira solution to make their network deployment and management, just tremendously easier and more efficient. And with that, it's time for our final gift card announcements. We have 2 Amazon $500 gift cards. The first one's going to Shannon Ryan from Illinois, and the second one's going to Tim Batten from Tennessee. Congratulations to both of you on the prize wins. And with that, it's time to wrap up today's event. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the 10 on Tech podcast over in the iTunes store. If you are a potential presenter on an upcoming event, reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And finally, I hope to see you on our next event happening tomorrow. It's the Supporting and Enabling Modern Analytics EcoCast. You'll hear from experts at Rapid7 and Pure Storage. Hope to see you there. I hope that you learned a lot on today's event, and have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.